Вітання усім.
Good afternoon, everyone. The topic of the first briefing is 4 years into the war, labor force crisis in Donbas. This research is presented by Galina Yanchenko, expert of Foundation 101, and Yaroslav Pilipchuk, expert of Ukrainian Institute of the Future, NGO. Welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending this press briefing today. And we thank you for the interest to this topic. Unfortunately, in Kiev and in other regions, this issue of Donbas is not often raised. And our organization, NGO Foundation 101, we want to draw attention to the problems of the residents of frontline areas of Donbas, and we present a research that is called 4 years into the war, labor force, a crisis in Donbas. So the trends that we can see in the recent years in Ukraine, we may see crisis of the workforce in Ukraine, but in Donbas, in these frontline areas, these settlements and towns, this crisis is deepened by military actions and outflow of workforce because of war and because of IDP problem. The majority of these IDPs, they are residing in these areas near the front line. So Foundation 101 and the Ukrainian Institute of the Future carried out a research to reveal the problems that exist in the frontline areas, towns and villages concerning workforce, and to provide assessment to governmental bodies, their work and their programs, and also to elaborate the recommendations for Supreme Cabinet of Ministers and local government and councils. And also we wanted to touch upon the activities carried out by international organizations and donors, and we believe that this research will be useful for them. This research was carried out with the use of 2 methods. We carried out in-depth interviews with further content analysis, and we carried out 26 interviews, in-depth interviews, representatives of different audiences, and the average duration was half hour to 1 hour. We carried out such interviews with the 4 target audiences. First, these were unemployed people who actively search for employment. Second audience of respondents, these are people who recently employed, who carried out this process of search for work and they were able to find employment. The third group is employers, and we tried to find out how they search for workers, what problems they face in the process, and how they overcome these difficulties. And the fourth group is the representatives of power, of course. So in this way, we carried out sociological survey of our research, we may say so. And the second method that was used by us is the cabinet research, and this was done by the Institute of the Future, and they assessed the statistics and other research and analysis that were carried out both by state institutions and other institutions, and also they analyzed legislation and state and local programs. And also we touch upon economic situation, and I would like to ask my colleague Yaroslav to tell us more about this topic. He is the expert of Ukrainian Institute of the Future. Good afternoon. I represent Ukrainian Institute of the Future, and our aim was to carry out this analysis and provide proper grounds for our research. So we consider the economic situation connected with employment in Donbas. So on the first slide, you may see the dynamics of the number of economic entities in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast. We may see that in the period starting 2010 till 2016, we have decrease in the number of enterprises in the Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, and this decrease was 56% in Donetsk Oblast and 71% in Lugansk Oblast. So the main indicator, the main consequence of the basic factors such as loss of territory or loss of operational centers, this is the fall of gross regional product. You may see in the slide that this fall 30% in Donetsk in hryvnia and 56% in Lugansk Oblast. So this is big loss of economic potential of the territory that practically caused impossibility to use proper measures to stimulate employment in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblasts. Other problems were logistics and transport. Control was lost over hubs and infrastructure in this region. Also, they lost the sales markets and they lost workforce. What we researched in our study is that a lot of specialists, technical specialists, were lost, and in the market there was such a situation when supply was greater than demand for them. Next, we see the slide, the structure of the number of officially registered IDPs in Ukraine. And if you look on the slide, we see that 50% these are those people who relocated in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblasts, and we face the situation when we do not have financial resources for incentives because of financial crisis, and the demand for these vacancies, they increased, so the crisis deepened in this way. And also there is an interesting fact: when we assess economic situation, we should assess also investment motivation, attractiveness of the region. If we look at capital investment 2013-2017, we may see that there is a fall of capital investment in these categories, 43% in Donetsk Oblast and 54% in the Lugansk Oblast. So these are significant losses, and we do not have any effect to stimulate in this region. Also, second block of the problems, the problem of the workforce, the main problems of the workforce are standard problems. The decrease of profit because of the fall of industrial production. They do not have financial resources, and the increase of inflation, and it led to the fact that the population became poorer. Also, there is limited access to wide assortment of goods, and that happened because many enterprises left. And also, third factor, the redeployment of workforce to other regions. And these three factors led to two main indicators of decrease. This is employment and increase of unemployment. If we speak about the level of employment, we may see that in 2013 the level of employment in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast was about 60%, and in 2017 there is a decrease to 55%, and Donetsk and in Lugansk and 50 in Donetsk Oblast. So in 3 years, these are big indicators. So now we consider the level of unemployment. If we speak about unemployment in 2013, it was 8 to 10%. Now these territories, it increased to 15% on average. So these two main indicators, they characterize the level of economic situation in this region. If we see it as a whole picture, we carried out economic modeling, and this relative decrease was really significant part in the economic potential. And if we go back to indicators of 2013, we need those efficient measures that will help us to increase the economy of this region. We need the critical points of growth in these territories. And in our research, we wanted to study those injections, those measures that are not only standard and basic that people know about, but we wanted to research those that can provide global growth and increase in employment in these territories. Now I give the floor back to Galina, and we analyzed the efficiency of incentives, and now I give the floor to my colleague Galina. So I would like to briefly tell you about our findings that we got in the course of the in-depth interviews and content analysis. You can get this full report. We provided it to you, but I will briefly outline the main findings that we found during our content analysis. First of all, Employment Center, that is the main state institution that should deal with employment of people. Unfortunately, in the course of in-depth interview, we revealed that as of today, the majority of people who address the center, they assess their function as nominal. These are the representatives of business and unemployed themselves, or people who recently got employment. The main association with these employment centers is the payment, unemployment payments. And there are different additional programs and proposals that the center can provide to people. There is such a program as the provision of small grants for business, but our respondents, none of them said about this function. They didn't use it. And it is connected with the fact that people are not ready to start their business. They are oriented to work as employees, and there is mistrust to some such payments from the state. Another opportunity provided by the center is payment for some training or retraining, refresher training, and only one person used this program, and this person got employment later on, but this was not the result of this course of refreshment, but this person got additional practice in order to get position. So why potential employees assess center of employment as inefficient concerning such a work? Because the majority of vacancies provided by the center, they are of low salary. The vacancies that are technical, or these are heavy jobs, and people who want to get better employment concerning payment and functions, they are more proactive and as such. And the employers, in their turn, they do not highly assess the work of employment center because they believe that the work is bureaucratic one. We heard about several cases when workers of the center, they were not interested in helping employers to find employees, and they just carried out bureaucratic procedures that didn't result in proper things, they didn't help employees or employers. So the problems that are outlined by the employees, by the workers, so it is you can find work through special sites, Работа.ua, Work.ua, OLX site. So they say that there are some difficulties. The majority of respondents said that there is a gender or there is age discrimination, and if you are older than 35 or 40 years, it is much more difficult to find employment. In some cases, even impossible, because such forms are not considered by employers. They are not asked for an interview in order to find out their level of qualification and their correspondence to the vacancy. Also, the lack of knowledge of computers or foreign languages, and this is an acute problem for elderly, and also the problem of that respondents face is there is no opportunity to get employment because of lack of higher education. And there are some people who got technical education and they cannot get employment in social services, and they cannot apply for such vacancies. So the problems business faces: inefficiency of employment centers, so business search for workers on private platforms we've mentioned earlier, and also recently the strategy concerning search of personnel changed. Often they search for young people, students, so graduates, who apply for lower salaries, and at the same time it is easier to work with them and to learn them how to work in the model of the organization and business. And also what was said by representatives of businesses, that a majority of them, they always have some vacancies. Some of them are open constantly, and they are forced to employ people who do not meet their expectations, and they should spend more time for their training. And about the wishes of business, so they say that first, they say that there are problems that they have with the judiciary, with the court proceedings, that they require a lot of money and last for a long time. And in order to prove some actions, they do not use courts and court procedures. And this long time that is needed for court hearing. So the issues are better resolved through other means, and that's why the court hearing is inefficient. And also they want to they want taxes to be reduced, especially for the start of small and medium-sized businesses. And some respondents said that they wanted to expand their business or to start the new, but they are afraid that they should have high taxes and you should pay taxes. There is no tax exemption for the start of small and medium-sized business. And also bureaucracy in procedures of getting permits that delay the development of business, and this also decreases the potential for opening new places of employment. And about more details about this research, you can find them in this printed edition. So my colleague Yaroslav will outline the recommendations for stakeholders, and I would like to add about the programs of incentives we analyzed. how the employment is stimulated. If we look in cases in Lugansk Oblast, 67 business projects were financed. There were 775 seminars and trainings, and on the whole, the financing was provided by the state to 50-60 million of hryvnias. So this is not a lot, and if we and we see that 67 working places were created. So if you look at the territory of Lugansk and Donetsk Oblast, you may consider that this is a really low indicator. Now I would like to go to the new model of incentives, and our logic is that the main concept is that the state should intervene less in the economic processes that are ongoing in these regions. There should be stimulation of business, and these steps, they should be really efficient. We've analyzed different instruments and modeled economic effect from the use of the instruments. So the first, we considered the standard instrument to provide low-rate credits for business in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast. The positive side of this activity is it is possible to provide incentives for opening the business. But if we see at the rate, 17% provided by the National Bank, and these huge rates for loans, it is impossible to implement this. Second instrument was to provide exemptions, tax exemptions for new enterprises, to provide tax holidays for enterprises who create 30 or 50% of new employment for IDPs. So there is a logic, but we see that the state do not have tax potential in order to carry out such reform. We should note, for example, we've analyzed going back to tax allowances. If we use such models, we will have a fact 500 to 1,000 new working places if we provide about $20 million, and this loan credits should be for at 10%, $1 or $2 million. And we believe that the second approach is more economically viable, and there should be systemic approach. Special economic zones should be created in these regions. We've analyzed the business plans of investment projects, 50 plans. We've seen that these projects can be implemented in special economic zones, and we can in this way increase significantly and improve this to get good results. And if we provide 5 million to light industry, we can create 200 new places of employment. But there is a problematic issue connected with the fact that creation of such free economic zones, this is a global issue, and a lot of institutions, the Cabinet of Ministers, Supreme Council, they should participate to create it, and also there should be legislative initiative. And if we look at international cases, for example, Poland and Belarus, they attracted in 10 years about $43 billion, and Ukraine in such a way can get up to $8 billion until 2013. So this is rather a big sum, but for this, a lot should be done. The third approach is classic one. Classic approach is the stimulation through development or construction of different infrastructural facilities. So in economic theory, it is called classic Keynesian approach, and we believe that this approach is more economically efficient. Now, for example, in the program of stimulation of the Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, it is stated that we will build 10 kilometers of electricity supply lines, and we will provide capital repair of railway lines and 30 kilometers of roads. And what will be the added value for the economy of Ukraine if we introduce such steps? We analyzed it and we found this figure that is really low. It's about 200 or 500 million hryvnias, but we have different logic to introduce such cases as stimulation through building of cement roads, not to build asphalt roads, but to build at the level as of sea, and to create cement and concrete roads, and the building of thousands of kilometers of such roads. It can bring $1.5 billion, and this is not only about investment and load for the Ukrainian cement plants, but also adjacent industries can be involved, and this will be not only for Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, this will be for the whole country. So this approach, we believe, is more economically viable. And if we go back to the package of stimulation, we divided this package of recommendations among stakeholders to Supreme Council, to Cabinet of Ministers, to local power, and to international donors. I would like to stress several important recommendations. We have a lot of them, and I won't say all of them. So, for the Cabinet of Ministers, we believe that it is important to make all the steps in order to create a centralized database about employment, about vacancies, and this should be provided and managed by the centers, employment centers, and it should unite Work UA, Работа UA, Job UA, and different platforms. Now we face the situation that we do not have correlation between vacancies that are proposed by the employment centers and the vacancies proposed by these resources, internet resources, and people on the internet, they see vacancies that are on these services, and they do not address employment centers. Also, we have an idea to create a monitoring system for these services, Work UA and others. And in this way, employment center employees will be able to get they will have more instruments to stimulate employment. Other important measure, if we speak about crediting, microcrediting should be used to review the concept of crediting 100,000 hryvnias starting from the sum, so we can analyze the startups that were represented in the Donetsk and Lugansk oblasts, and many represented investment projects. And these one project needed 100,000 hryvnias. This was the biggest sum that was needed for the project. So also there should be refresher courses, and we believe that we do not have proper marketing, and we should use innovative technologies. We should use virus marketing, and in this way we should promote employment centers, and also for international donors to provide an awareness campaign about implemented projects. When I analyzed this research, I didn't see the results of different donor programs. I didn't see the results. So first, I should have spent a lot of time to understand what international donors do, what are the results of their programs. And I believe that these results should be better highlighted, and they should be more visual and better represented, and communication should be provided better. Also, to attract displaced educational institutions in order that they participated in retraining. Those institutions that are not in the territory of the Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, they should function and they should be responsible for the potential to be provided in the territories of the Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast in the territory of Donbas. If we assess this package of recommendations on the whole, we should state that they should be concrete, they should be applicable, and they should be like this, that any person, any official can take this research and find out information about the main points of growth for the development of employment in the Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast. If you have questions, please ask. Andriy Megil, Institute of the Liberalism. Do you analyze the number of unemployed, those who are registered, those who are IDPs? So do you know the information about the number of unemployed? What are their opportunities for buying products? Are they able to buy them? Because we do not have proper statistics in this area. This morning, I've seen this. We may say that this figure is about 1.65 million. So today in the morning, the statistics was updated, and this is 1.5 million. So we have 1.5 million today, and 50% are IDPs who are in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblasts. And I want to state that 700,000 will make a pressure that and demand that cannot be met by those firms. And if we're speaking about unemployment, this is about 15% now. This figure. This exact figure, I do not remember. Do you have other questions? Sergei Dyoma, Center of Protection of Civilians in Conflict. If we assess international donors, what donors did you analyze? What projects did you analyze? Did you have projects of European Union and European Investment Bank, for example? I was a participant of this research, and my team analyzed the donors that provide finances for different investment projects and business plans. These are Investment Bank of Reconstruction and Development, and they have different programs for small business. And we saw that European partners, they allocate funds. There are different programs for stimulation, but we have one global problem. Those people who represent investment projects, they provide materials that are not of high quality. And partners, European partners, when they look at the presentations of these projects, they should not be professional. They should be at lighter level, but there are a lot of inaccuracies, and many projects do not succeed. And in this area, we advise to provide help by trainers or free of charge by employment centers. They should help with the presentations, with the preparation of the presentations of for the startups. Also, we revealed in the framework of this research and in the framework of other research that the local population, especially those people who are oriented to be employed in firms, they really value these programs of donors that are for social and short-term employment. For example, for help for elderly or help for the sick, and this is highly valued by local population, higher than provision of food or other different help, because in this way people can shift their status, they can become employed, and in this way they can feel that they are really those people who can provide for themselves. And not many donors provide such programs, and we revealed maybe 2, maximum 3 programs, and in the majority of cases this is not a great number of places of employment. We would recommend international donors to shift from this free help, financial and other, for example, food packages, to the implementation of some programs, and in order to help to carry out such social activities. And also this model can be used by local government. They can also create such short-term social employment for local population. I would like to add, if we go back to the case of business plans, there was an interesting project due to financing of international donors. Investment project was provided with 30,000 hryvnias, and there was a quality idea, quality presentation of the project, and this person in 2 months went to break-even point, and now this person earns $2,000 a month. So our view, the view of our team, is that we should stimulate business and we should stimulate startups more, and to attract foreign donors in order that they stimulated these business ideas. One question from me: what about the trends of labor migration in the region? It is clear that many people travel to other regions or to Russian Federation to get employment. What are the changes in this process? Because we have people who cannot find employment because of different regions. And do they travel short term, and where do they travel, and what is their qualification? What we've revealed in the course of in-depth interview is that labor migration is global and critical one in Donbas. It relates not only to IDPs and also local population. It was stated by the representatives of business, and there are many unemployed among local population, not only IDPs, and every respondent knows about people who left, those who and some people, they go on short-term trip, but some of them, they live forever. They take their families with them, and they live for permanent residence in other regions or abroad. So these are different people. There are people, as we got information through in-depth interview, there are people who have specific skills. If they cannot find employment there, they leave. Those qualified people who worked at plants or jewelry workers, they leave because they cannot find employment there. And there are a lot of people who leave. Those people who are manual workers. Also, we've revealed an interesting fact, that is, in IT sphere, they said that they cannot find employment. They searched not freelance, they searched for permanent employment, and they said that employment center do not provide these vacancies for IT specialists. They do not have them. And this was not some separate opinion. A lot of people thought about it. Some people cannot find employment in freelance, and in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast they cannot find employment in this sector. So the situation differs from what I've expected to see in the course of this research. And in what places, where do they go as labor migrants? Where do they go? To other regions, to EU countries, or to Russia? Where do they go? If we look at Ukraine, we see that IDPs, they go and they relocate, and these are Kiev, Kharkiv, and other places. It's not a secret that the biggest demand for our workforce is in Poland, and people go there. And we know cases of Italy, Ireland, and others. The situation is like this. We need to do everything possible in order to return these people. But now there is no efficient policy, and each year the situation becomes worse. And one more specification. So this information that you got, analyzing this information, can you tell us about the specificity of the region? Because there are many industrial enterprises, and people are needed with proper skills. And when there is a reduction of production, and these people, they become unemployed, whether this is an acute problem, and whether this problem will deteriorate in the years to come. So maybe this is one of the most acute problems. In the Ukrainian Institute of the Future, we analyzed the trend. What workers should be trained, and for what industries, if we take into account global trends. The global trend is the automatization, and in 10 or 15 years it may happen that many professions that exist now, they will be obsolete in 15 years, and in our opinion we need to take this aspect into account, and we should train specialists who will be really needed in 10 or 15 years. It's not a secret that in 15 years such professions as journalists, lawyers, that they will disappear, they will be replaced by algorithms. And we believe that we should stimulate and we see that in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast there is a potential in energy sector, and we see potential in light industry. Why in light industry? Because when we analyze investment projects, the term of payback is the payback period is the lowest, and a lot of employment can be created. So in this industries, we can create new places of employment, and people can be trained for this sector. Do you have other questions concerning infrastructure projects? If you see that now, for example, there are 30 kilometers implemented, and you recommend 1,000 kilometers. So what will be the assessment of the money? Because you should saying that this is the task that can be implemented only by international donors. For example, the funding should be provided by EU or, for example, Japan. It is stated that 30 kilometers of capital repair, this is the stimulation of Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, and in 2022, as I remember, we provided our recommendations 1,000 kilometers until 2030, and we wanted to show that when we make some economic steps, we should understand the economic effect that will be produced for gross domestic product, for citizens, for the country on the whole. And if we stimulate through capital repair, I do not believe that we will create a lot of working places. At our institute, we analyze such research of introduction of concrete roads because more different positive effects will be made out of it. If we look at life cycle of roads, for example, 20 years, so concrete and cement roads will cost much less, and each instrument of stimulation, it should be considered regarding whether it stimulates import, export. So we should consider whether our steps concerning this will bring positive effect later on. So we focus on the importance of the development of the infrastructure. When we speak and study the situation concerning business people say that the problem of infrastructure, the problem of roads and connection with the cities, this is one of the critical elements why business do not develop. For example, connection between Mariupol and Kiev by railway, they have only 2 trains and they spend 17 hours on route. And for example, Kramatorsk, where there is state administration, in Mariupol, there is big part of administration. The communication and the road between these cities is not good and takes 6 hours to get from one place to another. Bad roads and checkpoints and the sharing of economic resources and getting some products export, it also creates a delay in the increase of economic activity in the region. So our time is up. If you have other questions, please ask our speakers off records. Thank you.